Welcome back to Roll Again. My name's Steve, and today we're picking up where we left off last week. If you remember, I had gone through Craigslist and picked up a mega haul of some minis that were in games. There's 3 boxes. This is the second one, so this is part 2 of the mega haul. Last week in part 1, I opened up a box of Super Dungeon Explorer game and found 65 minis in it. So that was quite the haul, and I have no idea what I'm going to find in today's box. There's one more box that I'm going to do on a third video after this, so make sure you tune in next week for that. Today's box is Super Dungeon Explorer Forgotten King, which was kind of an expansion game that came out about a year or two after the first Super Dungeon Explorer, and so I've got this one as well. It's supposed to be pretty much brand new. So I'm going to open it up and see again what we can use. If you remember from last week, I had looked up Super Dungeon Explorer. I'm not sure I'm going to actually play the game. It's pretty complex and it's just not really kind of my thing. But there's a lot of minis, I think, that are in this box that I think that I could use for Dungeons & Dragons 5e and maybe even other role-play tabletop games. So we're going to see kind of what we can salvage from it. I got a great deal on Craigslist from a guy who had all 3 boxes and just wanted to get rid of them. And so right now, after the 65 minis I found in the first box, we're pretty much, I've easily made my money back. So everything now is just completely extra. So let's see kind of what we find in today's. All right, first thing on top here is some more dungeon tiles. The first box had some of these too. They're still wrapped in cellophane. There's, it looks like about half dozen different very sturdy, thick cardboard stock dungeon tiles. I believe from a picture in here or on the outside of the box that these are double-sided. But like right here, there's kind of a pond. It's like a marshy swamp area that could definitely be used for battle maps in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. These are 1-inch squares, so they definitely work. And it's really pretty cool little scene right here, and there's 6 of them. On the other side of the stack, there's also some little cardboard tokens, which I'm going to hold on to because I'm sure I might be able to find some use for them. Whether it's things like poisoned, psychic damage. There's a few little hand with the eye in it that you might be able to use for psychic damage, or a number of things. I'm sure I can find uses for these. Tokens are always helpful, especially when using miniatures and doing encounters in Dungeons & Dragons. So that right there is some useful stuff we already found. In here it looks like quick start rules to the game. A rule book. This looks like arcade mode. I believe when I looked this up on the internet, this game specifically, the Forgotten King version, had 2 modes. You could play either arcade mode or you could play classic mode. It's a neat little rule book. They're pretty extensive. It's like a 30-page rule book either way you go. Which is kind of the reason I'm not sure if I'll really get into it. There's some pretty good art in here. A lot of it is kind of in like cartoon anime style, which seems to be the style of the game art that I saw in the box last week. So there's some more rule books. There's another rule book. This says Explorer's Handbook. And it's got some more art in it and some different, I think a little bit of background on kind of the story that goes with the game. And there's kind of a nice, neat little map on the back, which is kind of cool. And now we get into the stuff I've really been waiting for. There is a number of packs of cards that are in here. It looks like they kind of correspond with maybe some of the minis and some of the different pieces of the rules of the game. There's little character cards here. They've got things like strength stats, armor stats, dexterity, things like that, health. So I'm pretty sure it's part of the game, but it's got some neat little art on there. There's another one. There's a dragon on this one, but a whole nother deck. And looks like a third full deck. This one looks like it's got items that go with the game. And again, I mean, I'll look through them. There might be some spell cards or some item cards I could actually use for visuals in a game. And then there's some tile effect cards that are kind of neat. It's a fourth little packet of cards. So we'll put those over here. Here's some tokens. These are little like heart or little potion kind of plastic. They're very tiny plastic kind of little minis. Maybe you could put next to a character to remind them kind of that they've got, you know, a potion, or they've got maybe some temporary hit points. You might be able to utilize them in a way like that. Here's some dice. Now, these look to be just like the dice I found last week in the first unboxing. They're all D6s, and they're really not anything I could use in Dungeons and Dragons. They're not 1 through 6 D6 dice. They've got, like, they're all very game specific to this game. They've got 1, 2, or 3 stars on them, and some of them have a heart symbol or like a potion symbol. So they're not really something you could utilize for Dungeons and Dragons, but they're kind of cool dice, and I always like dice. There's more cards. These are these are smaller cards, if you can see, compared to the normal decks that came. These are quite a bit smaller. And I'm not sure what these actually have on them. It looks like maybe monsters. It looks like a couple different monsters that are on here. Another whole deck of really small miniature cards. Quite a bit of cards here. And there's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more decks of cards that all come in here. So it's pretty extensive in cards. Now we'll get kind of into the minis. A few large minis right off the bat. I'm not familiar with the game. Like I said, I'm kind of looking to see how I might be able to transition these into Dungeons and Dragons. This is a large mini, which is pretty cool. It's not any type of monster in Dungeons and Dragons, but as I mentioned last week as well, I like to homebrew a lot of stuff. So a lot of these I might be able to use for inspiration to kind of create new monsters to utilize with my campaign and the players that I'm running the campaign with. This guy looks kind of like a super huge kind of hamster. Angry, he's got vicious teeth, and he's got a little unicorn horn and kind of a skull on his stomach. Not sure what to do with this guy. Kind of like last week, I'll say the same thing today. If you're at home viewing, and you see the pictures I'm going to kind of put in into this video of the close-ups of these, if you think of some ideas, please put them in the comments, because I definitely will be reading them. It's a cool thing to paint up, but I'm trying to figure out, what do you think this might be useful for in Dungeons and Dragons? Next, we've got plant monster, or like a tree. This is pretty cool, actually. You could use this as a tree monster or treant in Dungeons and Dragons. It's on a large base. It's very detailed, really cool sculpt, and again, I'll put some pictures in the video of close-ups, but it's a really cool sculpt of like a tree monster, and it's on a large base. This could be really useful. Here's a plant monster. Looks kind of like Plant from Little Shop of Horrors, but it has a few extra extending vines with other mouths on it. Again, if doing a jungle or forest kind of, or even like a Feywild theme for a session during a campaign, these could be really useful. That's another large base monster. Third large base monster. This looks kind of like looks like maybe like a ware-bear. It would be a lot bigger than a ware-bear. Again, it's a large comparatively. I'll actually put one of my D20s out here for kind of size comparison. He's quite bigger than most minis, but maybe like a giant ware-bear or like a giant polar ware-bear, something like that. Might be able to use it. It's a really cool sculpt. He's got some armor on. He's got this huge mace, morning star kind of thing going on. It's really, really pretty detailed and intricate. And again, just another large, I mean, the first four things I grabbed out of here are all large size minis, which you can always use large size monsters, especially as your players start to get higher levels. Like I said last week, the players in my campaign I'm running are pushing level 5, so they're about to move into the next tier. Probably, pretty soon. Once they hit level 6, they'll be moving into the next tier. And I'll have a need for a lot more high level monsters. Even if I'm using some of these to kind of create my own, it's a great piece that we can add to the encounter. So that's pretty cool. Oh, this is a cool dragon. He's standing upright, like almost like a dragonish humanoid. He's got wings, not a dragonborn or even a half dragon, because he's really not humanoid in shape. It really just looks like a dragon standing up on his hind legs. And it's on a large base. So again, kind of like the dragon from last week. I don't know if you can see it. It's up here. You could use it as maybe a young dragon or an adolescent dragon in Dungeons and Dragons because it's on the large base, but it's still just a cool mini to utilize. That's now the 5th large mini. Here's another one on a large base. This looks like a were-rabbit. It's got rabbit ears, but an executioner's hood and an executioner's cloak, and it has this huge, almost like a reaper axe. It's a little bit bent, but I can fix that. A little bit of warm water and move it, and then don't get in cold water. But he's got like this executioner axe as well. So I'm sure this could come into is pretty interesting storyline. Again, next to the 20-sided dice there. It's on a large base. So again, that's another large monster. These are really pretty cool things that you can utilize here. Let me get into some of this. Here's a second one, a duplicate. So 2 of these huge rabbit executioner guys. Here is looks like a really small fighter. Maybe it's not even a halfling. I would say maybe like, I don't know, maybe something like a fey creature, maybe. Knight that's on the back of a bird. Looks like he's going to joust. He's got a little lance. It's our first medium-sized creature. And I'm sure there's got to be a little more. Here, this is another plant-based monster. It's medium-sized. It's not on a base, but it just kind of sits well on itself. It's kind of like a toadstool on a stump, and it has kind of a like jack-o'-lantern face carved into the stump. Move some of these guys over. They're taking up a lot of room, taking up a lot of prime real estate here. This is another large base creature. This looks like an angry toadstool, and he's kind of just running around. He doesn't have any arms, but it looks like they've tied these rope with kind of studded or spiked metal balls at the end around him. So I don't know if he can run around and hit people with them. He's got a really angry, nasty, pointy tooth scowl on his face, and he's in a real kind of cool running pose as he's like running through, just kind of berserker style. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's the 8th large in this group. That's more larges than in the first one. The first one only had 5 large minis. So we already have 8 large minis in this group. So that's pretty cool. And there's still a lot more in here. Here is just kind of a battle map kind of set piece. It's not a character, but it looks like it's maybe a tombstone. It has a number of different runes and hieroglyphs kind of carved into it, and maybe in some skulls kind of sitting outside it. But that can be a useful and neat addition to a set. Here's another one of these guys on these little tiny fey guys with their lances on top of a mounted bird. And here's another large mini of the Toadstool, the angry Toadstool, kind of running rampant. Got a number of things in here, so looks like I've got an angry squirrel. It's kind of a small piece. He's got a very nasty, vicious look on his face, and he's got a spiked knee pad like strapped to his tail. Some little tiny angry toadstools. I'm going to put them next to these huge giant ones. A little tiny version of whatever this hamster unicorn thing is. There's some little baby versions that look like they've got like a weed or a brush in their hand that they're trying to hit people with. These are, looks like a tiny dryad. There's actually two of them here. I didn't know at first if they were player characters, but I don't think so because there's doubles of them. So they're like a tiny dryad. Looks like a little female sculpt who's got leaves for hair. Does not look angry or mean. Has a little smile on their face, so I don't know if it would be an NPC or possibly some kind of a monster that the player characters would have to go through. Another angry toadstool. This is a neat sculpt of like a thorn throne with a headless knight. And it doesn't look like his head came off. It looks like it's supposed to be off. It looks like a headless knight sitting on these thorn thrones. Here is kind of a wild hog charging around. Move some of these guys back. This is a plant monster carrying a carrot. I'm not sure about that. Again, a lot of cool stuff you could utilize in a jungle or forest kind of adventure, maybe even a swamp adventure. Or maybe Feywild, some of the stuff that people may never have seen before. Another just set piece, kind of a stump with a skull growing. The roots of the stump or the branches coming out have grown through a human skull. Just kind of creepy kind of set piece. There's another one of these headless knights. It's kind of been wrapped up in like a throne of thorns and vines. More of these tiny, angry faced toadstools. Another one of these little tiny hamster unicorn guys. Another set piece of a skull on a stump. Another wild boar. Looks like in total there are 4 angry squirrels. Another plant monster. This one's not holding a carrot, but he's got like the top of a mushroom as a shield. I don't know where I put his plant monster buddy. There he is. A third plant monster. This one's a little smaller. Oh, here's a 5th and a 6th squirrel with a spiked armor piece on their tail. Could use those as kind of a swarm of squirrel attacks maybe, as well as these little baby toadstools. 6, it looks like there's 6, 7, 8 of those little baby toadstools, as well as the large toadstools. So you might be able to have the large toadstools attacking, and maybe these as like kind of minions, just kind of attacking in a large swarm at the same time. I believe because this is an expansion pack, it doesn't come with, I don't know if it comes with player characters. I think it's more set up for you to use the player characters from the first box that we opened last week, and these are just supposed to be more monsters and more terrain and set design kind of stuff, which is pretty cool. You can always use more of that. Like I said, especially if I would decide to do like a jungle battle, or deep woods or Fey Wild kind of battle. This is definitely the type of setup that you could use, and you got pretty much everything you need for a session or even a campaign that happens in the jungle or the wilderness. Here's a third wild feral hog. I could use them in a lot of stuff. You could actually even use them as, if you have a druid who has a wild shape and decides to use like a boar or a hog, you could use that. Or if you wanted to let somebody kind of have a little bit of a different familiar, you could use the little hog, feral boar kind of thing. Pretty neat. I've got 2 more of these plant guys. They're all made of all leaves. So that's, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those now. Here's 6, 7, 8 plant guys. So that's another swarm of different monsters. It's really cool because, you know, sometimes, especially as your player characters start to get a little higher level, they get used to you throwing big monsters at them. But sometimes as a dungeon master, what I've found is you can do just as much damage, if not more, by throwing a lot of lower level creatures at your party. It splits up the party, and if they don't really work together, you can find, you can have a 4th, 5th, 6th level character get in trouble and maybe even, go unconscious or have to do death saves because they just were overwhelmed by lower level creatures that they kind of took for granted. And so a swarm of 8 or 10 different lower level creatures hitting 1 or 2 players at the same time can really do a lot of damage. And so that's kind of a neat option that this gives me as well. Kind of like last week when the first box I had 29 kobolds. I have a whole kobold army now. And that's the kind of thing you could overwhelm a group of 4 or 5 player characters with, 20 or 26 or 28 kobolds. And they might have to retreat, even if they're, 4th, 5th, 6th level, because it just might be too many to fight off at the time. This is the last large that's in the box. So it looks like there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 larges. It's a huge thing here. 10 large pieces. This is the Forgotten King that the box is kind of named after. I think he's supposed to be like the big bad guy of this expansion pack. It's kind of cool. He's got some horns coming out of his time. He doesn't look like much, but he's got some like tentacle kind of things coming out of the bottom of his mouth. Could almost look like a mind flayer a little bit, but he definitely could be a large size wizard or some kind of fey warlock or monster that's decides to try to take over the forest or that you have to defeat. Definitely has that magic user, warlock, wizard, sorcerer vibe. He's got a staff with looks like a leaf and some thorns on it, so you could even kind of do a druid kind of wrap in here. And he does look kind of like he's part creature, maybe like a ram or a goat. He definitely has fur on his face with these big, huge goat horns coming out of the top. He has a little dagger on the side. It's a really good sculpt, big flowing cape. There's a lot of different detail and texture to his outfit. So that's pretty neat as well. Like I said, for having 10 large, I say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 large miniatures in this box is ridiculous. I mean, you know, you could end up paying a lot of money for that. And as I said, I already made my money back easily with the miniatures from last week. So there's another, put him up front. There's another great mini in this piece. Now we're kind of getting down to it. There's a few more things in here. There's another plant monster. That's 9 plant monsters. Here's a 4th wild boar. Next, another one of these hamster unicorn guys. There's a couple of, these are a new character I haven't seen so far. There's a couple of these like evil, it looks like they look like they're a platypus. They've got like a little beaver kind of tail, but they've got like a duck bill on them, and they're fighters. They've got little helmets on, and this guy's got an axe, and he has a little tiny short sword on his side. So they're like a little bit more of a warrior kind of piece. Here's another one, same kind of sculpt. Here's a 3rd one, and he's got the axe, but he's in a different position. So it's just a different sculpt of that same kind of duck. I guess I would call him it's definitely a platypus is what they're going for here, which is kind of cool. I don't think I've ever seen a platypus warrior or a platypus fighter, and there's 2 more of those. And one last one of these, it looks like. About 2 more. So there was, all together, there was 8 platypus fighters in 2 different positions, which is kind of cool. And now I have a lot of these hamster unicorn guys. I got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of these mini hamster unicorn looking guys, and then they've got the one big one standing right next to them. I've got one more terrain piece. It's a duplicate of this stump with like a toadstool on top of it. I had one here earlier. There it is, right in the middle. And then I've got what looks like 3 more mimics. I had 2 mimics in last week's set. Here's 3 more mimics that are supposed to be a treasure chest, but they've got the teeth and the tongue hanging out. That standard mimic kind of look. So there's 3 more mimics as well. All right, so another huge haul from that same Craigslist buy. So this is 62 miniatures, and again, last week's in the same haul. Last week's I had 65, so all total it's 127 minis so far. I've still got one more box to unbox and to review, but this is another piece. Like I said, there's some amazing large pieces in here, 10 large pieces. This fallen king piece is really cool. This dragon up on its hind legs, kind of challenging, almost like in a bear stance, is really cool, as well as this ware-bear, I don't know what you would call him, ware-bear kind of, he's more of the size of an ogre on a large base, and this treant creature. There's a lot of really cool, useful stuff, especially for a Feywild or a wilderness or a forest or jungle kind of setting. And so much you can do with this. 62 pieces, I'm really happy with that. Along with the battle map tile settings, again, the same as last time. A lot of cards if you're looking for art or for maybe any kind of useful character or item descriptions that we might be able to use. I still have to look through all of those. But besides that, a lot in this piece. If you have any ideas on how to use some of this stuff, I got a lot of toadstools, a lot of battle squirrels, I've got a lot of little plant monsters. I've got a few ideas going on in my head. I definitely want to get these painted up. I still haven't painted up the ones from last week. And if you got any kind of ideas on how to use these in a Dungeons and Dragons 5e combat scenario or setting, let me know. Put it in the comments. I'll definitely read it. If I like your idea and I take it, I'll definitely give you credit in one of the videos and in the reply in the comments. So please, if you like the video or you really think this is kind of a lot of some cool minis here, like, subscribe, and again, drop me a line in the comments. I'm always looking and reading them. So until next time, I'm Steve with Roll Again, and as always, keep playing and have fun.